Welcome to the Design Thinker podcast, where we explore the theory and practice of design. Hosted by me, Dani, and
me, Peter.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Dani.
What are we chatting about today?
Today, Dani, we are going to talk about AI in human-centered design.
That's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yes, definitely. And if you happen to be listening to this in 2023, then it's kind of timely as well. It's one of these things that's just emerged to a lot of people seemingly out of nowhere, the idea of AI, in particular from ChatGPT. But maybe let's stick to our tried and tested format and start to explore, what is this AI, human-centered design, and why is it important? And then we could get into, well, how might we actually put it into practice?
Yeah, I feel like there's so many avenues we could take this topic down, right? Like there's, I'm sure you've seen this too, like, all of these conversations about the fear of the robots are coming, although that's been talked about forever. So there's that end of it. Then there's the how do we adapt how we're working so that we're integrating our work with AI? And then particularly for our interest, like what does AI and tools like ChatGPT mean in human-centered design?
Nice. I think we might cover all of those things, but what's most interesting, let's guess that what's most interesting to our listener is that the kind of how can we use AI in human-centered design? I think anyway. But it isn't. It's like you said. So it is. Sorry, I kind of almost ignored your remark that it's an interesting juxtaposition. It is, isn't it? It's one of those, for me anyway. It's one of those intriguing statements, or that has, on the surface at least, potentially two opposites pulling against each other. So for me anyway, artificial intelligence. We'll come back to the first part of that though. In human-centered design, it's like this idea of a machine and human. They're like two different, sometimes opposite things.
And I think that fits really into design, right? Like in design, a lot of our work is about holding the tension between, good design happens, in that delicate balance of tension, right? Or, like if you think about how we are always trying to look for feasibility, viability, desirability, and good design sits in the intersection of that. So there's always that pulling tension. So even in this topic, there's that tension of AI and humanness. So maybe we'll start with what do we mean when we say artificial intelligence?
I'll start with the uneducated perspective. Artificial intelligence, maybe I've heard it described as general, or is it general artificial intelligence, or is it specific? I think specific artificial intelligence, AI. I guess it's a computer processing lots of information and generating a response to a prompt. Well, let's start simply for a prompt from a human.
Do you want Google's help with this?
I think we should probably get Google's help with this.
Okay. So according to Google, artificial intelligence is a field of study and type of technology characterized by the development and use of machines that are capable of performing tasks that usually would have required human intelligence.
Okay.
Now that's interesting, because as I was reading that, where my mind went to is, so is a washing machine artificial intelligence? Because at some point that was something that, humans had to use their hands to wash clothes. Or is the difference there that it's intellectual capability versus physical capability? So
yeah. Well, yes, but I think that is the difference, because, well, yeah, where my mind went, it's a great test. Never mind the Turing test, the washing machine test. Yeah, I suppose it's helping us narrow down to this. I think what we're talking about here is intellectual intelligence, rather than any other kind of like physical intelligence, like you're suggesting, or emotional intelligence, etc., etc. Yeah. Intellectual, maybe opening all sorts of minefields here, or avenues for intellectual, and maybe even could I say logical intelligence.
Yeah, but then how is logical intelligence different from artificial intelligence? Because if you think about computer code, that's all based on logical. That's basically based on if then, right? I mean, complex if then, but
that's what I mean. I mean, that's maybe a slightly further narrowing of what depends on your definition of intellect. Can you Google the definition of intellectual, please?
So this might help. So then it goes on to talk about 4 main types of artificial intelligence. There's reactive machines. So these are machines are AI systems that have no memory and are task specific, meaning that an input always delivers the same output.
Yeah, okay.
Then there are limited memory. This is the next type of AI in the evolution. So I guess that means it can remember some things. And then it goes on to talk about theory of mind.
Okay.
Theory of mind and self-awareness so it's the next 2 evolutions, a theory of mind and self-awareness. So these are supposed to be more AI technology that are more predictive and understand the world and how other entities have thoughts and emotions.
Okay.
And then they take that input and adjust how the AI behaves based on the ability to sense that. So I think what this is talking about is that AI has evolved from a very basic to now much more adaptive and responsive. So I guess AI is becoming more intelligent.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like so you wanted me to look at the definition of intelligence.
Intellectual.
Oh.
But look at intelligence. Actually, look at intelligence. Maybe that's more helpful.
So intelligence means the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Then another definition, intelligence is the ability to learn or understand or to deal with new or trying situations.
Those are quite helpful definitions. And then what about intellectual? This could be a bit of a rabbit hole, dead end, but I was curious about intellectual intelligence versus in humans. I suppose I'm talking about now intellectual intelligence versus any other kind of intelligence.
I'm going to
ignore that and do something else.
No, intellectual is basically another way of saying intelligence, right? Because the definition is ability to think and understand ideas. Then you can use it as a noun, like someone is an intellectual. Okay, I feel like we might be going down
let's reverse back out of this. There's a dead end for this particular conversation.
I think where we were going with is artificial intelligence. What did we say it was? So I think where we're going with this is that the definition of artificial intelligence, according to Google, is a field of study and type of technology characterized by the development and use of machines that are capable of performing tasks that usually would have required human intelligence.
Human intelligence, yeah. Okay, and then we talked about the washing machine. I think the washing machine, let's say that's a washing machines with some degree of artificial intelligence in them now, kind of
Oh,
fuzzy logic.
here's another definition that might help.
All right. Okay.
Artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines.
Mm,
So if we go with this definition of artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines.
mm,
What does that mean for design?
mm,
And particularly human-centered design.
mm. By that definition, it suggests that artificial intelligence can design or can simulate design.
So does that mean that we probably need to start developing some new skills?
Because we're going to be out of a job.
Mm.
Maybe adapting the skills and becoming. Yeah, I was thinking about thinking about the evolution of the activities of design. Another maybe this is more of a step change or a moment of change than a gradual shift. I'm not old enough to actually have done it, but from what I understand, let's say graphic designers before computers copied things, cut them out, and pasted them. So physically, would cut out an element of graphic design. Let's say, some letters out of a typeface, and then they would, literally put some glue, some paste on the back of the piece of paper they've cut out, and then paste it to another piece of paper and start creating their designs in that way. And along comes a computer. We've still got that language on our shortcuts on our keyboards. We cut, copy, and paste. What's happened there is, a physical process has been, let's just call it digitized. It's been taken out of the entirely physical realm and put into a computer, into digitized. Maybe what we're starting to see with AI and human-centered design is a similar shift or step change. So some of the thinking that was done, or some of the intelligence that was used to do that original copying and pasting, was replaced, and the designers, I guess, finite human intelligence is redirected to something else.
It's interesting you say that, because, I think I've shared before that my first career was a graphic designer, so I did go to design school. And it wasn't that many years ago, although it's getting to be more every year. Early days of design school, you're still doing things by hand. Okay. You're still encouraged, at least back then, you're still encouraged to draw and sketch out your ideas, and encouraged to prototype on paper and things like that. And even people, and so recognizing I haven't been a proper graphic designer in many, many, many years, but even designers that I even practicing graphic designers I know now still use pen and paper to think through ideas. But then, like, to your point, when it gets time to, like, okay, looking at typography or font styles, they're not sitting there cutting out things from magazines and stuff anymore, because you can just pop on your laptop and look at all the fonts your heart desires, right? But I think there's still some aspects of design for designers that go back to pen and paper, or pencil and paper, or charcoal and paper, whatever you're fancying. So I'm just giving that as an example to, like, push your thinking a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. And that where it pushes my thinking too is something else that I've had on my mind with, I've played around a little bit with Chat GPT, and asked it to create some words for me, and it is, of course, it's mightily impressive. It's really easy to take what it produces and use it, and there's potential to use it, without even looking at it. You go, I trust this machine enough to generate a result that's as good as, if not better than, what I could create, and I'm just going to feed it into my my process, whatever that process is, a writing process. Or what I wonder though, in the same way that but I believe, and hopefully you can give me some scientific insight into this, some research-based insight. So by writing, with a pen, pencil, even digitally writing with an Apple Pencil on an iPad, there is a connection between, I guess, our physical intelligence and our memory, where we're kind of coding things into our brain by doing something, if that makes sense. It's like, and I'm wondering if that is missed by using an AI tool like ChatGPT, where we're kind of, I can't quite put my finger on what I'm trying to say here, but there's a risk, I suppose, of us losing full understanding and maybe therefore generating, the right meaning from something by using AI tools, maybe not full stop, but AI tools in a particular way without the right maybe mindset or approach.
Well, a couple of different things to unpack there. So there's definitely a connection. Anytime we do something physical with our body, there's a connection to our brain, right? Like your fingers are connected to a part of your brain, your toes are connected to a part of your brain. So, and depending on how, so I think there is, and there's a lot of science that talks about how, when you physically write something down, it improves, like you remember it more, the likelihood of you remember it increases and things like that. So there's absolutely, and then I also think like if we're using the writing as a mechanism, it gets us away from the screen. And if you think about how much of our lives we spend in front of a screen, that repetitive action also isn't, very stimulating for our brains either. So there's a lot there. When we think about AI, like I wonder if we're thinking about it differently, right? Like, so you think about your work, and everyone's job has an element of it that's just not that fun. Like, let's face it, right? So I wonder if what we need to be thinking about and considering and exploring is like, how might we use things like ChatGPT or whatever other tools so that, we have it help us with some of those low value tasks or the tasks we don't enjoy, so that we create the capacity and space for us to do more of the things that we want to do.
Yes, I think that's a great premise. I'm a believer in let's as humans, let's get machines to do the things that machines are really good at, so that we can spend more time and effort doing the things that humans are really good at. But maybe for me, this is the kind of getting right into the heart of this question of AI and human-centered design, and maybe it's I guess the next period of time as designers, we should be paying a lot of attention to learning what it is that only humans can do, rather than outsourcing to machines. That makes the difference between human-centered design and let's say non-human-centered design. How do we spend time? How do we avoid human-centered design becoming machine-centered design, because we've outsourced it all to machine?
How do we make like
it was a slightly playful, facetious, but you know what I mean? It's like, what is it? Well, maybe another, let's play our opposites game, where we go, okay, let's.
I think what you're saying is it human-centered design if humans aren't designing it?
No, what I'm saying is, if we outsourced it all to machines, can it still be human-centered? Or I guess I was kind of playing around with machines will take over and they'll create designs that ultimately benefit machines rather than humans.
Isn't that happening today, though? Isn't that already happening?
Maybe tell me things come to mind for you.
Well, like, we've designed things like you think about dark patterns, right? Like we've basically made people addicted to scrolling. So, and humans designed that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not promoting dark patterns or any of that here, by the way. I'm just so I guess, if we're worried about what can our machines going to create things that benefit machines, even in the human context, humans create things that benefit themselves or a corporation or whatever, that are self-serving and potentially harming others. So
true. I kind of interrupted you there because I'm really vehemently agreeing with you. Like, of course, designers and maybe designers and the corporations they work for have created some really bad things, like really messed things up, including those dark patterns and making things addictive in service of in service of selling things, and it's done a lot of harm. So yeah, of course, that's a different perspective. Maybe it makes me, maybe machines would. I was going to say machines could avoid that, but it depends on the humans driving, if you like, controlling the machines. What's emerging though for me is, there's huge opportunity, but also huge risk, isn't there? AI, full stop, but in particular, AI and human-centered design.
Tell me more about what's the particular risk.
Well, just like I guess the risk is that we, and I'm sure it exists already, you can configure a series of machines, artificial intelligences, to design something from end to end. And by that, I mean from the starting point of a big question, a design challenge, to a usable product. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, I bet somebody somewhere has configured a chain of artificial intelligences, because I don't think there's one particular software program that will do everything, but does some sort of research that starts to frame up the research into insights, that starts to take those insights and to formulate some possible problems to solve for humans, then generates heaps of ideas in a nanosecond, then chooses heaps of those ideas to then prototype, to test. I bet it's possible to do that, and eventually the end point of that is some software product that could be launched
makes
on
the
that
thing.
makes or that is uploaded to an app store that people start using. I bet well, it would be interesting to know how much of that could be done with zero human intervention. The risk of that is that it's a bit like a lot of the algorithms that are running in the background of our world at the moment. We don't actually understand what's happening between the starting point of design challenge to the end result of a product being used by people.
So I think the risk there is that all humans are flawed, all humans are biased.
Yeah.
And humans are developing artificial intelligence, and we are going to pass on our biases and our our flaws to this technology. And I think at the same time, we have this perception that machines are accurate. It's a mental model, right? And I think the risk is that we've created things that are flawed, but we're treating them as they're absolutely accurate.
Exactly. You just summarized. We can probably cut out the last 10 minutes of my wiffle waffle for the maybe this should be a warning at the beginning of this podcast. put it on 4 times until you get to Dani's thing. Yeah, actually, that's a really, in fact, I'm going to get you to say that again so that me and the listener can write it down. So the risk is that we think we have a belief.
The risk is that we humans are flawed and biased, and we're creating artificial intelligence, and we're passing on our flaws and our biases to technology. At the same time, we have a mental model where we trust technology to be accurate. We believe technology is logical and accurate. And the risk is that we're creating something that has our flaws and biases, but we're going to trust it as if it's completely logical.
Yeah, logical. And what grabbed my attention especially was accurate, and 100% accurate. And I suppose that really grabbed me because, yeah, that's coming back to my point of, you can ask ChatGPT to generate something for you, and you can just take it, and if you choose to, you can fully trust that it is accurate. Yeah, you can just send it off onto the next step in a process without taking time to review it and use your own, I guess, biases or experiences, intelligence to go, is this what? Well, in the case of, if you're asking it to write some copy, you go, is this what I want to say? Is this really getting across? Is this? Will this have the intent that I want it to? Will this help people feel the way I want them to feel?
So I've been playing around with ChatGPT in a few ways, right? I've been getting it to write things for me in different contexts, right? So like if you think about something like writing, a big part of being an effective writer is understanding who you're writing for. So I've been playing around with, with topics I'm very familiar with. So, behavioral science, human-centered design, things that I can pick up errors on. And I've been asking it to, write about this for an audience of, high school students, write about this to a board of directors at a Fortune 500 company. And what I'm learning is it doesn't have the ability to take context and really ground it. Like it'll make tweaks and things, and it'll say things differently. But I don't think, at least at the stage, it doesn't understand the context of what is it like to talk to a group of teenagers. And it's like, for you to know a teenager, you've had to have experienced. I know what it's like to be in a large meeting at a large corporate, right? Because I've done it. And so I know what will land there and what won't. I know that when I'm lecturing, how I need to do it so students can follow and learn, and how to adjust content so that the audience I'm speaking to, it's connecting with them. Now, what ChatGPT is really good at is sometimes getting me started. But it still requires me to come in and put in that human experience into it. So what that essentially means is, like, if I'm designing a workshop, it can help me create an outline. It can help me, do all of these things, which means that it accelerates how quickly I can pull something together, but I still have to put in the time to go do the thing, and make it relevant.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well, where, I'm starting to see it as, it's a highly capable assistant and highly intelligent and capable in some regard. And I guess this is true for any AI that I played around with, whether it's ChatGPT or some of the kind of image generation ones. It's entirely dependent on the input, like you're suggesting, the thing you ask it to do for you. And even then there's limits. And I do like certainly the image that is conjuring up in my human mind, being in a large meeting or a conference and standing on stage and doing a presentation, or even facilitating a workshop, for example. I can the way my mind works, I can close my eyes and be there. I can see the people looking back at me with puzzled faces, puzzled looks on their faces, for example, and then knowing how to adjust my approach to engage them. Yeah, I guess that they are. I guess what are some of our senses are certainly in the simple AI tools that simple AI tools that we've been using, or that are in the minds of the public at the moment. They don't appear to replicate all of our human senses.
I also think we have to recognize, like, humans and human emotions are very, very complex, right? There's people that have spent their whole lives studying. And if you think about, like, the human brain, it's only in the 21st century, really, like, we've really gotten a solid understanding of neuroscience. Neuroscience is, we've always studied the brain, that's, existed. But if you think about kind of some of the things that we know today, that's really very recent human knowledge. And it's still very complex, right? Like, so the brain is very complicated, human emotions are very complicated. And I don't know that I think AI is going to continue to advance, and it's going to be able to do cooler and cooler things. But at this stage, it's not at the point where it can distinguish between some of the human experiences that we can. And I also think, like, particularly with things like writing, have you ever had, like, you're reading somebody's book and it's an author, like, I read a lot of Adam Grant stuff.
Oh yeah.
And when I'm reading his books, I know what his writing is like. Like, I can tell you I'm reading an Adam Grant book, even if I didn't know it, just because I know how he organizes information, how he there's a style to how he does it. I don't know how well. So I think if you took a topic that he writes about and asked ChatGPT to write about it, and you compared the two, it won't have that, at least not at this stage, in my view.
I know what you mean. That's an interesting idea. There's a couple of things come to mind. I wonder if you said to ChatGPT, "You are Adam Grant, write about, I don't know, reward and recognition in the workplace," and then compared what it came up with. And then maybe you could get ChatGPT to then compare the two and say, which is the real Adam Grant, which is, but then,
and maybe that's how you train it to be Adam Grant.
Well, exactly. It's being trained right now.
So I think,
but the second thing that came to mind was, in terms of image generation. I think if you said to one of these image generations tools, take this photograph of the view out of my window, paint it in the style of Rembrandt, then no problem. It would do that. So maybe that's I don't know what that is. There's a difference there's currently a difference in the way that these tools can simulate different manifestations of human intelligence.
Well, here's the thing then. So the only way that AI knows how to make something look like Rembrandt is that Rembrandt had to have created it first. Yeah. So I guess the question is, and maybe this is more philosophical than anything, but does that mean that humans are always going to have to create things that then AI replicates or perfects?
At the moment, I think the answer to that is yes, because I've heard it. I think I read it somewhere. Like tools like ChatGPT, all the rest at the moment, they are analyzing and synthesizing, distilling, whatever information exists already. They aren't necessarily, or they aren't creating any brand new information. But then maybe continuing on your philosophical angle, or in terms of creativity, are humans doing anything different to that? Are they, when we create something, are we creating anything absolutely brand new, or are we simply taking two existing things and putting them together? I don't know. We'll leave the listener to think about that themselves. There you go, listener. There's some philosophical pondering for you. Back to our question, though: artificial intelligence and human-centered design.
Yes.
So I think so. What we're in the course of our conversation, what we're saying is there's tools that can simulate human intelligence. They can help us write things. They can help us create visual things. They can help us with lots of producing of things. There is a risk they will simply amplify our existing biases, and there is a risk that we will fail to see that the amplification has occurred, and they'll just that the AI could accelerate us down an unhelpful path. But on the upside, if we pay attention to these tools and how we're using them, then they can actually be really helpful assistants and help us design faster by taking some of the time-consuming, sometimes processing work out of things. Yeah, but I guess what I'm having initially been slightly concerned or worried and threatened by some of these AI tools, I'm now seeing them as actually they're really intelligent and helpful, or can be really intelligent and helpful assistants to. I'll borrow a phrase from IDEO. They called it, rather than framing it as artificial intelligence, they're thinking of it as augmented intelligence. So they're like, I guess, like thinking of it as like a mental model for me is in some factories now, in some building sites even, people can use robotic arms, extensions of their limbs to lift heavier weights, to do, a repetitive job precisely over and over. It's like that combination of
they use that in surgeries.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
To be more, precision guided, precision guided surgical procedure.
Yeah.
I might be making that term up completely. Medicine is not my area of expertise, but I do know that they are using. So I think the meat of what we really need to talk about is, as human-centered designers, we need to start moving past the fear of AI, because it's here, right? It's here, and it's only going to get better. And I've seen several memes posted like, AI isn't going to replace you, but someone that knows how to use AI will replace you.
Yeah.
So I think as practitioners, what we have to think about is, how do we proactively start using AI in our practices? And how do we do that in an ethical, empathetic, inclusive way that still aligns to our human-centered design principles?
Yeah, I love that. This is a nice getting to the point. We find whatever way you need to, as an individual, to move through that fear phase and start learning, understanding, embracing it, going down the human-centered path of empathetically using it. And then what jumped out at me there was the ethical, so the ethics of it. And maybe that's what's right underneath the surface when I get down to it. That's the most concerning, troubling part. But then the surgical model, I wonder what we can borrow from that domain. Because if if surgeons are getting help from machines, they must, that whole domain, they must have be exploring, or have explored, have considered what are, where does the responsibility, accountability.
But how's that any different from how we use technology now? This
is my probably simplified. Coming back to the kind of copy and paste thing. So maybe it's a visibility and understanding thing. Maybe it's just a phase of my comfort and understanding, etc. And I'm lacking a kind of my own mental model of how to make sure. How to make sure that when I'm using an AI tool, then I'm still, like you're saying, being ethical, empathetic, etc. And I guess the visibility thing comes to mind, because when I'm working on a computer at the moment, and let's just say something really simple, like writing up a run sheet for a workshop. I input, on the keyboard, and I can see the output on the screen, and it's my mental model. I know there's a whole bunch of electrons and ones and zeros happening in the background, and if you pause and think and even look at your LCD screen, my mind is like, oh, that's just mind-blowing that's happening. But nonetheless, I'm typing in an A, I'm seeing an A on screen. I think with AI, the gap at the moment for me is I'm creating an input and I'm seeing an output, and I have no idea what's happening in between. So therefore, this trust thing, how can I trust what it's saying?
But how's that any different than if you put something into Google?
Mm-hmm.
How do I, like earlier we looked up the definition of artificial intelligence, and then we looked at the definition of intelligence. How do we know what it's doing in the background? Or if you take that to a context of something we know absolutely nothing about, right?
Yeah.
So like, we all use map software on our phone, and we put an address in, we get in our car and we go.
Yeah.
How do we know that, it's not taking me to some alley that's going to get me murdered?
Well,
but we trust it, right?
We've maybe it's a learning thing. We've learned to trust it. We've learned to, depending on your age, like I had my parents staying with me recently, and they still will second guess the as they call it, the GPS, the maps app on the phone, whereas maybe I've naively learned to trust it in almost all cases. Maybe I don't know whether this will bring us to a little bit of a wrap. I listened to a podcast a wee while ago. It's an episode of 99% Invisible. We'll put it in the show notes. It's called Children of the Magenta, and it's all about pilots in airline and cargo pilots, commercial pilots flying large aircraft that have automated systems like the autopilot. If you go into the cockpit of an airliner, especially a modern one, there'll be lots of switches, but fewer screens. Lots of the information is consolidated onto a handful of digital screens, and then before the flight starts, the pilot and co-pilot, the captain and co-pilot will program in to the aircraft, to the computer systems, the flight plan. So how it's going to get from taking off to landing. Everything is programmed in. Let's say the direction, the speed, the height, the climb rate, all of that is programmed in, and then it becomes represented on the screens by magenta lines. So the user interface of an aircraft cockpit, you'll have black screens with information on it, and usually the digits are green or white. But the specific, let's say, the aircraft needs to travel at 350 knots. Well, there'll be a little magenta line on the screen that shows 350 knots. And the pilot's job, once they program that in, becomes monitoring the system to make sure that the speed, the number 350 lines up with the magenta line that represents where it should be. And just like maybe my imagined design process earlier, once that information is programmed in, then the plane can more or less take control of itself and take off and land automatically with zero. In theory, this is with zero intervention from the pilots, which is amazing exploration of the idea that you only need one human being in the cockpit to monitor the systems. But the risk is that pilots, instead of flying the airplane, they're monitoring the system to make sure that it is flying the airplane in the right way. And the ultimate risk is that, as the episode is called, Children of the Magenta, the relationship changes from human using machine to help fly plane to machine using human to monitor that it's flying plane in the right way. So, it flips. There's a risk the relationship flips, and we outsource so much that the human, the point of Children of the Magenta is that pilots just start to lose the ability to control the airplane. They can no longer, this is hypothetical, but if we rely too much on automated systems and teach the pilots simply to monitor those automated systems, then they stop being able to fly the plane if those automated systems fail. That's a very long story, but
we humans have been doing that forever, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that your daughter would know how to operate a CD player?
She does not know how to operate a CD player. She's 5, and no, she does not know how to do that.
Yeah. So that's going to be a whole generation of children that have no clue. Like, to them, music comes in a digital file that you play on a device. So that's something we've given up. Or, taking it a step back, most people from the 80s and 90s know how to rewind a cassette tape using a pencil when it gets all. That's a skill we've given up. I think the general public is losing the ability to read a map.
Yeah.
Because we do it on, like you put it in, you put it in your phone, you get, turn left here, turn right here.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I think humans have been evolving. Most of us don't know how to hunt for our own food. I don't know. Do you know how to pluck a chicken?
I'd need to watch YouTube to.
Without technology assisting you, would you know how to go out there and kill and pluck a chicken and get to feed yourself?
No.
But at some point in our ancestry, somebody, that was a known skill that people knew how to do.
Yeah.
So I think that we have been trading off one set of skills and capabilities for another set, and that's how humans have advanced.
Yeah.
So I don't know how this is. I think it's scary because it's happening to us.
Yes, agreed. And maybe taking your chicken plucking idea, thinking about the worst of industrial food production. That's what we want to avoid, any of this newfangled AI nonsense. Like I agree, totally agree with it, that we've been, as we have evolved as humans and society, we have relinquished skills and capabilities as individuals and as societies, and there's lots of obsolescence. And like I said earlier, I think there's huge optimism and hope for using AI, and but there's also that risk. Let's just be mindful of it, I suppose. Let's be aware of where things could end up. If you said to people 100 years ago, would you rather 200 years ago keep plucking your own chickens, or would you rather go to the supermarket and buy a chicken that is full of antibiotics, hormones, hasn't led a good life, etc., etc.? People have been. Another
similar example, I love the show Downton Abbey more because of some of the historical things that just crack me up about it. But there's parts in that when they were putting electricity in to the Abbey, and they had initially put it in the living rooms, like the main living spaces, and one of the characters said, well, pretty soon it'll be in kitchens. And we look at that now and we're like, oh my God, kitchens didn't used to have electricity. And back then, in the show, the character goes, why on earth would we need electricity in the kitchen? Here we are in 2023, and electricity in the kitchen it's an expectation now. So I think it's similar to that, right? Like, I think some years in the future, people are going to go, oh my God, people used to write their own emails or whatever it is,
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a good and enjoyable, eye-opening, enlightening, thought-provoking chat this week, Dani. What does it all mean? What's AI and human-centered design?
What does it all mean? As a design thinker, it's kind of a battle call or a battle cry, whatever it's called, for us to really lean into our creativity and our idea generation and go, how do we as design professionals leverage this?
Yeah, nice.
And I think that starts with conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an opportunity for us to frame up as in terms of situation optimizing. I liked what you said earlier about thinking ethically and empathetically. Definitely something that we need to fully embrace, start experimenting with, I guess, full awareness of what the risks are. What about takeaways? You got any takeaways from this chat?
I think my takeaway this time is more of an action, is having more conversations about the use of AI in our work. And finding opportunities to have those conversations.
Mine's I guess, talking of conversations, this conversation has helped me think about my relationship with AI in my design practice. And actually, it's almost helped me think, well, now I'm going to go and start playing around with things and experimenting with them and making the most of them and seeing them as really helpful, powerful tools to help us in our practice rather than thinking of them as being threatening or extremely risky. So yeah, thanks for the chat, Dani. It was really helpful for me, and maybe our listener feels the same.
I think what I take away is I'm going to go talk about it more, and you're going to go experiment with it more.
Yes, and maybe what we'll do is talk about it again in a few months' time to see where we've got to.
I think that's a brilliant idea. All right. I think that does it for us in this episode. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.